Welcome to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, where I, Pepperina, sit down with a couple of other amazing ladies to dig up the dirt on the Undead in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. For this episode, I've resurrected Casey and Miaca so we can sink our teeth into this episode called The Returned, a dose of Morose, Theros foes who won't adios. I think I got that right.
Well done, well done.
Long title.
Well, last time we spoke about undead, it was all about eternal servitude and creatures that just can't lay down for their eternal rest. In this episode, we're going to cover those who made the long trek back from the underworld in Theros, just to find themselves stuck for eternity with their own sadness and loneliness.
These creatures are from Theros, like we said, and they really feed into the idea of Greek tragedy. I love Greek lore and myths, and Theros really speaks to me. We know that Megan is all about the Norse lore. Which ancient or classic culture inspires and enchants you two?
You want to roll for it, or we just want to go? Should we get our first roll out?
Let's roll. Let's
roll
roll
for it.
I got a 13.
One moment. 11.
Are you waiting for me?
Yeah.
19.
19, you go first.
So yeah, I love Greek mythology so much.
Mhm.
That is like my all-time favorite. Absolutely love it. Everything about it.
Yeah.
I would love to play here, by the way. If we could like fall through a purple portal and get thrown into this world, I would absolutely just thrive. I would love it so much.
Hint, hint, Adam.
Yeah. Wink, wink. I think Greek is probably at least what I know the most of, but I love all sorts of lores and myths and just finding out about various gods and creatures and different cultures and things. I think it's all very interesting. School-wise, we hear mostly about the Greek gods and study that kind of stuff. So that's what I know the most of, I'd say.
Yeah. Miaca, me too. Megan and I in the Giants series, which I hope everyone has also listened to, we touched on this book in a couple different episodes, and me too. I'm like, oh, I love this world. It's so good. Yeah, and I do probably know the most about Greek culture and lore as well. So that's where I lean, but I can't completely ignore Norse lore because I love me my Norse history too.
I can respect that.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm up first. So let's go on a deep dive into some lore in Theros. So everything I'm about to discuss can be found in the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. So getting started, on page 73, we get introduced to Phoenix. And before I even get started, I'm probably going to mispronounce a whole bunch of words. So
We all are.
yeah, buckle in. So on page 73, we get introduced to Phoenix, the god of deception, also known as the patron of lies and cheese. And I absolutely love him. To mortals, he appears as this like gray, willowy, like humanoid figure, wearing like elegant robes, and his face is covered in a mask. Phoenix was once mortal who was trapped in the underworld. He escaped. He was basically like, this isn't for me. So he escaped the underworld, tricking Erebus and like disguising himself. He was able to escape the underworld by sacrificing his identity to the memory draining waters that are the Tardix River. When other people realize like, oh, this is a thing we can do, they do the same thing, which is known as the Path of Phoenix. So if you want to leave the underworld, you can do the same thing Phoenix has done and take the Path of Phoenix. Phoenix is efficient in reading the room. Whatever the situation calls for, he is able to do it. He's very quick-witted and just very awesome at reading people. He is able to read the desires of others and adjust his approach to make you trust him. Phoenix and his forces took over the city of Adios. After all the fighting was over, there were those that asked to be spared. They didn't want to go to the underworld, and they literally asked Phoenix for Phoenix's mercy. And he was like, sure, I'll help. Unfortunately, he did not help. He was like, no, don't worry, you won't go to the underworld. I'll keep you safe. And they like literally believed him. So what did he do? Well, he let the return kill them, and he bounded their bodies and souls to this great oak, and this great oak guards Adios and like haunt the living. And I looked up a picture of it, and it just looks like this gray tree with just bodies just like infused into it. And it's like, ooh, that's a lot. So I talk a little bit about the returned. According to Theros on page 83, the returned are zombie-like beings who escape the underworld at the cost of their identities. So these are people who, like I've said before, have taken the path of Phoenix. The return reside in the cities of Asphodel and Adios. These cities are very barren and depressing because the return brought like this dark cloud of the underworld with them. So very, very depressing. A fun fact, the return wear masks, and depending on the craftsmanship, they're worth like 100 gold pieces. So, y'all can take that and run with it. I know I would.
Yeah.
But the only catch is most people want nothing to do with these masks because they believe that they're cursed. So you may have a hard time selling these things. So since they do not have the idea, I'm sorry, say it again.
I said just melt it down. You'll be good.
Yeah. So
nobody's gonna know.
How would they know?
How would they know? How would they know? So since they do not have the identities that they once knew, they sort of separate themselves out into like these specific roles. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive here on some of them, and I'll just touch on them briefly. So the anagraphers, these are like the scribes of the return. They work with other returned, and they take notes on like this white parchment paper in hopes of like trying to like trigger some of their memories that they lost from their path of Phoenix. It is said that in these scrolls could hold like the hidden wisdom or like the lost of identities of the return. We have the gray merchants. They wear hooded gray cloaks and push around a cart with trinkets. These are like my favorite. These like trinkets are usually stolen and cursed magical items, jewelry, and jewelry from grave sites. In return, they just want weird stuff like kitchen utensils and like basically trash. And like they don't speak, they only communicate in gestures. And like once they do their trades, they just like run off into the shadows. And it's like, all right.
That's a little Fae feeling to me. Like they just want random shit.
Yeah.
You're like, all right.
I'm like, these guys are like the best. And then we have the Kakomantis. They're spellcasters, and they sacrifice small animals to make their spells a little bit more powerful. The Palamnites, they're vicious killers. They just slaughter innocents, and from what I saw, they were just very chaotic beings. And I'm gonna mispronounce this one. The Pseudomas. These are returned that were once parents, which like breaks my heart. They are so broken by no longer having their children that they snatch mortal children to raise, but like have forgotten how to raise them. So like they don't feed them. They like, they don't take care of these kids. They have these kids, but like they don't know really what to do with them. And they're just collecting living children. Just
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm feeling the void, but now I don't have any insight on what to do
now. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, dark.
Very dark. So I touched on how the return live in the cities of Asphodel and Adios. For a deeper dive into these cities, you can check out pages 100 to 101. The return that live in Asphodel want to be left alone. They don't leave the city often. Here you can find specific city landmarks and leaders, such as the Colosseum of Aphandi. I think I'm saying that right. It's a circular stone building that is in the center of the city. The leaders listen to like specific cases, and they make decisions on behalf of the city. So like some type of like returned government. The trespassers are brought here, and like you have the elder return that are the leaders, and they kind of pass judgment and gestures. They don't speak to you. They just like, again, use gestures. And that's the way they communicate and pass judgment. You have the Order of Theros. They are mages who defend Asphodel with magic. They are devoted to studying magic, but they have a hard time remembering it. And so because of this, they write everything down on the Stoa of Shadows, which is like where their home base is within the city, and it's just covered in their engravings. All of Asphodel sits on the Hitos Mire. The mire surrounds the city with uninhabitable and dangerous territory. This mire basically defends the city. You can also find the blood tree here on the southern border. It basically just drips into this mire, and it's just very haunting. For like to see a tree just like dripping like crimson like blood, basically. I hate that. Very vicious creatures. They're drawn to this tree, and they're like always hunting prey here and dragging them into the mire, which is very disrespectful. Like, I don't like that. Adios is a bit more chaotic, if you can like believe that. They are not very open to reason here. They hate the living and would rather just kill on sight. So it's like on sight for them. Outside of these cities, we have Tamaret, who is here on behalf of Eberus, and he is looking for Phoenix. So, since he knows Phoenix can be anyone, because, you know, Phoenix, he's a liar and he can just deceive anyone, so he can turn himself into anyone. Like, he kills all living people just to be sure. So, like, if you walk up, he's going to kill you because you could be the god of deception. So, basically, his, like, main goal in life, after death, afterlife, whatever, he's trying to send Phoenix back to the underworld. And so since Phoenix became a god, he kind of just lets this happen. He's watching this guy just like slaughter people. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna let him continue doing this. And I'm gonna go do like my own thing, which makes him very funny to me. Like, I think that's hilarious.
He's like, you do you, buddy.
Yeah. Keep going. So
you're doing great, sweetie.
Yeah. So here in Adios, we can find the Bothers in the Crypts of the Lost. The Bothros. I mispronounced that. Not the Bothers, the Bothros. So the Bothros is like a bottomless pit on the north edge of Adios. Nothing that goes in can like ever be recovered. So it's just this big, huge bottomless pit that people just throw things in. The returned warriors, this is where they kind of like dispose things, or they just throw their captives in there, like, you know, just execution style. And no one knows what's at the bottom of this pit. It's basically bottomless. Nothing has ever come out of it.
So it's like the pit in 300.
Yep.
Totally.
Yeah. That's what I'm envisioning, just in the middle of a city and just kicking somebody in.
Yep. And then we have the Crypts of the Lost, which I think would be such a fun place to explore. This is just like a labyrinth filled with tombs, and they describe it in the book as honeycomb tombs. So just like tombs, I'm envisioning like all over the walls in this like big, huge like maze. This is where Return go when they just want to die and just end it. It's like they don't even really want to be returned anymore. They're just there waiting out death. They've realized that the return life is just too much, and they're just waiting for death. There are rumors here that you can find treasure, and this is the place where Phoenix like first emerged when he left the underworld. So they're kind of just drawn to that area of like, maybe I can just go back to the underworld and just like deal with it. And that is it for me.
All right.
Wow.
So yeah, I really like this
guy
and like this whole return thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing.
All right. Well, now I've got some questions, so let's roll some dice.
All right.
Oh, I got a 1.
3.
Miaca, what do you got?
17.
17. All
Okay.
right.
Miaca's killing it today.
I am.
Yeah, we need to up our game, Casey. All right, Miaca. Do you have any quest ideas from all of this?
I guess from what I just said, I would set up a quest in the Crypts of the Lost. That right there, like, to me, anything can happen there. Like, you could fight return, or maybe not. You can try to like weirdly communicate with some of them because they're just like over being like returned. And I would love to like run through that labyrinth and see like what's in there, and try to find some treasure or see what lies, how close to the underworld can we get, if that is, what happens there. So yeah.
I think that definitely has a lot of good quest opportunities in those tombs. The thing that stuck out to me were those scrolls that you had mentioned, where they write down like their past and try to like figure out who they once were. I think that would be a very interesting way to bring your party into it. And like you said, some of the returned are over it. They don't want to be this anymore, so they could employ your party to try and figure out who they once were, and help them with that. So I think mixing sort of the creatures from the tomb and those scrolls would be a really fun quest opportunity.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's so many little pieces here to like latch onto and make some sort of treasure hunt for things. Like the tree that you were talking about with the bodies that are just like stuck to it. Searching for a particular person, and you like are very sure that they were killed and brought here, but they could be in the crypts of there was 2 or 3 different crypts. There was this tree, and imagine searching and actually going through the crypts and maybe finding some really cool items along the way, but or maybe finding an item that was theirs, but you don't find their body. So you're searching and searching, and then you finally get to like this tree, and you see just like some sort of like fabric or armor that's, like half stuck out of the tree, and it's them, like, there's so much, and it's so dark and sad too.
Yep.
And the bloody tree, if you go to this region, you have to make the party go and see, like, put the imagery of them. Either they see it from afar, and then as they get closer, like, they see that the tree has like movement in it, but it's not from the wind, it's from these like trickling like blood pools and paths on the tree. Like, oh, there's so much.
That ain't maple syrup dripping down, huh?
No, do not want to tap that.
No. Well, that brings us into our next question, which is how would you use the existential horror of all of these areas?
Going back to that tree, I would just like, oh my gosh, I would make it like the bodies just try to move against the tree, and they make the tree move, and it's just all warped and ugly looking, and just like it could do some damage even if like you look at it for like a long period of time. Like, that's how I would play with it.
And I think a lot of times with these episodes, when we talk about like the horror and the body horror and existential horror, it's on one creature. This gives us the chance to explore 2 entire cities worth of existential horror. So it would be like, what would it feel like walking into this city? Just that feeling of dread and depression and the death in the air of it. Like, that's gotta hit you in a certain way, and describing that exactly, and the slow movements of these creatures as they have nothing really to live for at this point, and as time goes on and they get more depressed and more sad about the life that they are, or unlife that they are living now. I think I would really zone in on just that whole city feel, like what it feels like walking through these streets, and the shuffling of the people and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And just immense lack of color. It's always gloomy. There's always some sort of like mist hanging in the air. And I think you could easily add in some sort of ability check around like psychic damage the longer that players are in. Maybe you could even target some of your more susceptible players to the storyline of this region, or if the thing or person you're trying to find or the reason you're in there, just to add that next level of, you guys can't piss around in here. Like, the longer you're in here, the worse it's going to get for you, but you need to figure your shit out. So that sense of like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to end up here. I don't want to be here. So like, this is impacting my abilities.
Yes. There is a variant stat that you can use. I've only used it a couple of times, but there is a sanity stat in D&D that you can include. I think it's in the DMG, but I could be wrong about that. I think this would be a very good place to use that.
Great place to introduce it, because imagine if, you know, you walk up to that tree, and either tree, the bloody tree or the body tree, and then you start asking your players to roll sanity checks, and if they've never heard of that before, they're like, what?
Right.
Like, okay, add to your character sheet another ability score, and this is where you're at right now. Roll your dice to see what happens. And it's just like, oh shit.
It's like, we're not even in there yet. We're dealing with all this outside stuff.
Role playing, which is a little bit tricky since this was a very large section. But again, like with cities full of people, how would you role play those people in those cities?
I said before, I really like the gray merchants. So I would have to pull them in for like a silly role playing situation, I guess.
Conversation that really goes nowhere. It's like, oh, I'll take that. They see like the spoon that's, you know, poking out of your bag, and it's like, what? Why? Like, I'll take that.
Yeah, like for this gold crown, you want the spoon, and they're just like, they're all for that spoon.
Your party is not going to trust that in this place. They're going to have so many questions.
Yes, and we're going to talk about how insight doesn't quite work the way you want it to with most or all of these creatures. So that would be interesting.
I think I would try my best to give each different, because there's a lot of different kinds of folks in this, and we'll break it down more as we go along to specifically how we'll role play each one of those. But I would definitely try and pull unique traits for each kind of thing, so that your party understands that there's more than just one kind of returned. There's more than one kind of thing in this city, and they all are different and have different ways of talking to you and different ways of communicating, as some just gesture, some can talk, and trying to figure that out. And the ones that just gesture, I would do that as the DM. Like, I would not say anything. I would make those hand gestures as I'm being that person.
Might as well go all in. Mixes it. And that sense of like listlessness, that like they don't really care about anything because they don't know to care about anything anymore. Like they don't remember their passions, they don't remember family, they don't even remember what they cared about. And so I feel like there would be also a lot of just frustration in trying to get information, because there'd be lots of confusion, a lot of repetitive information in anything they find to like read. Like the scrolls won't be a clear cut, you know, story. It probably will have a lot of repeating the same thing over and over, and maybe you'll have to sift through like 20 or 30 scrolls or a bunch of different books you find, and you find just tiny bits of information because there might be just one key word that one time one of them, you know, remembered a spark, but there was just a bunch of gibberish otherwise, or wasted energy. So it will make it a kind of a slog for the party to get what they're needing to do, but that's the whole purpose. This is loneliness and sadness. A place of impending doom. Like,
it's not a fun place.
Not a fun place at all.
So do we have any like exploration or clues that we would give to our party as we're leading up to this, like these two cities?
I would say like the air immediately becomes like heavier, and like that, like this is where like those mists and like the feel of the underworld starts to begin. So it's just like a very slow drag on your players as they're like walking up to like one of these two cities. I think that would be it. And maybe also like discarded like special items, like maybe a piece of a crown, or like maybe like you find like a gold piece somewhere, because they want to get rid of like the really fancy expensive things for the things they remembered from life, like kitchen utensils and like the really minor things. So maybe kind of seeing that just like scattered about as you're leading up to the city. I think that would be cool.
I think it would be like most D&D players have experienced Barovia in some way, shape, or form. So it would be Barovia, but more dread and more depression and more darkness. So I would start like kind of with the idea of Barovia and then take it deeper as you're getting closer. It's darker. They're bringing darkness with them. So the more that come to this city, the more dark it gets and the more gray everything is. I think Casey mentioned like lack of color, like everything would be gray and then there would just be like that red blood running down the tree. And I would like very much emphasize the color red on certain things like that to accentuate that like blood against the gray.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the overarching theme is that there's just bodies being brought here, or like anyone living who attempts to enter is more than likely like going to be killed in one way, shape, or form. So I imagine, some of these returned might be tasked to move bodies. So you might be walking up the road and just see these creatures pulling a cart with just a whole bunch of dead bodies on them. And they may not interact with you at all. They might just ignore you because they're just doing their task. But you just see, and they like have no emotion about it. They're just doing their job. But there's just like horrific, there's body parts, there's like full bodies, there's piles of bags and clothes, and like it's just everywhere. You can't escape it. Everywhere you look is just like the imagery of death, decay, and sorrow.
Yeah.
Why do we want to go there? Like, oh my God.
Right. For the treasure, Casey.
The treasure.
They don't care about the gold.
We're all just loot goblins.
Yeah.
All right. And that brings us to our next section, which is, I believe, the drifters that Casey has. It
is. So the first returned type that we're gonna deep dive into is the drifter. Yeah, I feel like at different points in my life I could perhaps relate to the sense of sadness and loneliness that they're feeling. And it's like, oh boy, Chrissy. So
these aren't the creatures we want to relate to.
Yeah, it's like I feel you. I get it.
I get it.
So as Miaca mentioned, when the returned escape from the underworld, they typically, and not surprisingly, find themselves a bit lost. They come back, realize, who was I? Where did I live? What brought me back here? They have no sense of what that is anymore. Who am I? That endless personal development question. Who really are you? And so they have lack of motivation. They no longer feel passion for the things that perhaps they once did. They don't even maybe remember what their passions were at all. And for obvious physical and historical reasons are shunned by the living, because they obviously are not living, and then they have no purpose. So they're just kind of wandering through. So the living will see it and be like, like, get away. Like, we don't want you here. And so as a result, the returned drifters, especially, lots of times will find hideouts. So they will find a place that they can reside in peace, out of sight, out of mind. And many times it will be tombs, and they're just still trying to remember their formal life, but feel listless and sit in the depths of despair. This, however, won't stop them from self-preservation. So they will defend themselves if threatened, and they have enough intelligence that at times they can be like, you can interact with them and they can be negotiated with. You could perhaps convince them to come with you for some reason, or get them to do something for you. So, you know, if you've got a high charisma stat, you could potentially make some progress with them. So let's dive into the stats around this creature. And of course, we are still staying in the mythic odysseys of Theros. The returned drifter is medium undead and typically lawful neutral. So here is where, as we move along with different creatures, we're going to see slight changes in the typical alignments, which is interesting because most of the time when we're dealing with undead, they are like lawful evil or chaotic evil, but we're seeing kind of an evolution and a mix with these ones. These ones have an AC of 13 with leather armor. They have a hit point average of only 11 and a speed of 30 feet. They are a CR of 1/4. So they are there, but they don't really have a purpose. So they're
a little squishy, huh?
Yeah. So if you really just want to, you know, not deal with them, they will leave you alone. But if you try and hurt them, they're going to try and fight you to a very minimal degree. Ability scores are all above average or average, with intelligence and charisma being 0, wisdom and con being +1, and strength and dex at +2. Damage resistances to necrotic, damage immunity to poison, condition immunity to poison. Those are pretty track for undead. They have a passive perception of 11, and they know the languages they knew in life. So this one I think we'll probably play around with a bit more later, but to have somebody that perhaps knew 5 languages in life and you can talk to them, but then they have no information. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you know 5 languages? Like, I don't know. I just so frustrating, but imagine being them.
Yeah.
So in terms of abilities for these guys, they have what's called turn resistance. This is advantage on saving throws against effects that turn undead. They also have unreadable face. So they are immune to any effect that would sense its emotions or read thoughts, because they don't really have any. So insight checks are all made with disadvantage. As far as actions go, the returned drifter carries a scimitar. So this is a melee weapon attack with +4 to hit, 5-foot reach, and 1 target. On a hit, you take 1d6 +2 slashing, plus that ever always there 1d6 poison damage. It also carries a sling for ranged weapon attack. This is a +4 to hit. Range is 30 feet or 120 long range, and 1 target. On a hit, 1d4 +2 bludgeoning damage. And that really is it for these guys. So they're not super complicated. They can put up a fight. They might surprise you by actually fighting back if you try to interact with them and they just seem so listless and uninteresting. You might just want to be like, let's just move on from these guys and get rid of them. they will fight back, but they don't have a ton to work with.
All right. Well, let's roll some dice and ask some questions.
All right.
All right, that's a little bit better than the one that I got. I got a 6.
You got
Oh
11.
boy. 4. What the heck?
I guess
Switching
I'm
dice.
That's it. I'm switching too.
Like, one moment.
Our
Fresh
dice are
dice.
cursed. Fresh dice. What'd you
It's
get,
the
Miaca?
conversation.
I got an 11. I think
An
I beat both
11.
of y'all with an
you're
11.
first with an 11. All right. Do you have any quest ideas specific to the drifters?
These, as a player, they would really annoy me. Because I feel like, they're not really helpful. But I guess it would be cool to finally try to get some of them on your side. I know you're rolling with disadvantage on insight, or probably a lot with like communication. But I think it would be really interesting if you get one or two to like join your party as like an NPC, of course, but like to join the party and help out as much as they can, for if they can even help. I think that's how I would use them.
Yeah. And I think these are probably the ones you're most likely to see, since they do travel more and aren't necessarily in the city. So, and they're so low level. So like your baby players can interact with them and not be completely obliterated. Casey, you said something about their languages and like, why would they know 5 languages? And I think you can really I love the idea of leaning into that. The languages being your clue for the quest of who was I? Why do I know these 5 languages? Like they can talk to all of your party in specific languages. Like maybe they knew Judaic, maybe they knew Thieves' Cant, and so like your druid or your rogue can pick up on that and might have a little piece of the puzzle. Maybe they had a story about a person that they remember from the lore of where they came from that can help connect these dots. So I think the quest would be coming across one of these and trying to help it figure out, like they're sort of a lost puppy dog. Like you want to figure out where they came from and help them, or just kill them, but that's not much of a quest. So I would lead into the helping, but some parties out there are just gonna see him and kill him. So
yeah,
and not get to that quest.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking this also could be the little tidbit of help that you need. Say you are searching for one of these cities and everybody's rolling poorly that day. The DM is just like banging their head going, oh my God, they're never going to find. I have laid them out, but they're rolling so shit. They're not seeing the clues. They're not seeing the direction. I can't do, like, it's a point where you could possibly drop. They encounter some of these in the caves that they like decided to hole up in for the night for like a long rest. Suddenly they realize that they're not alone and there's some drifters in there and they're not trying to fight or anything, but they're just still in there. Like they're probably like, don't move. They won't see us. We don't see them. Like, let's just get through this. But again, if it happens that they're discovered, perhaps they will know where these cities are. And so maybe you can convince them to show you the way to get there, because that might be one thing that they know, because they escaped and they moved through these horrible areas. And so they might not want to go back there, but yeah, you can convince them to show you. Yeah. All
right.
That's kind of mine.
What about the existential horror factor of the drifters?
Existential horror. It's kind of hard. I see them being like, I guess, looking at them like what they look like, taking in what they look like. I feel like they wouldn't be as put together as like the Elder Returned, who are like, passing judgment on people. I feel like they would just look so worn down. Probably not very, it probably wouldn't lean into the horror of it, but like just so depressing, so worn down. And like you may have like a few of them that are like trying to kill you like on sight, but it would probably be very easy to kill them. Just very leaning into that depressing factor, just very depressing to engage with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with previous undead, we, have their skins falling off and their faces are sunken in, and they've got wounds everywhere and that kind of thing. And I think with these, it's a completely different kind of horror. It's like a completely different type of horror movie, not your zombies, but something completely separate. And I would lean into the emotional state of it.
Yeah,
because they are so lost. And just like Casey said, everybody's had that moment in life where you just are lost and you just don't know what your next step is. And just diving very deep into that feeling and pulling that from your players of this thing that is in front of you has no clue what it's doing. It has no clue where it's been. It has no clue who it is. And it's just lost and playing with that emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. Impending doom. Just, it doesn't really, like, it doesn't care about riches. It doesn't care about like you gaining it any sort of favor, because it's like, I don't need one.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just wandering around trying to figure out who I am.
Yeah. I think you guys like described it very well. It's that emotional damage that is just gonna come through hard with these ones.
All right. That sort of leads into how we would role play them.
So I was thinking about the whole language thing, Casey. Like, wouldn't it be funny if like they figure out, oh, like you speak Elvish? And it's like, yeah, all right, well, we're gonna move on, and like they follow you. Like, how disturbing would that be? Like, you couldn't get any information out of these things. It's like, all right, well, we're going to move on. And you turn around and you just see like a group of them just following you, like wherever you go, because they're like, wait,
just trailing behind you.
Remember something. I can't just like let you wander off. Like having the party deal with that. It's like, are we going to just kill them, or are we just going to bring them along?
You think you got away from them, and then you make camp and they're just like standing over you when you wake up, like, hey.
Yeah. Yes. Or they've like rummaged through your bag and found like a cup or a pot or something, and then you wake up and they're like, I would like to have this.
Like, get out of here.
Shoot.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah. Like that we're making them so comical and they're so sad.
Yeah. That's how we deal with
so sad.
damage.
Yeah.
Bring humor into it.
Yeah. That's why we're so funny. For me, for role playing, since they do have such a limited memory, I would write out exactly the things that they know so that I have that as the DM. They have very limited information and responses that they can give you. So I would make sure that I would write that down so I didn't accidentally give out more than they would know. So you want to know exactly the information that they would have, because that's it. There's no getting anything else from them. And that's going to be very frustrating for your party, who's going to ask them a million questions, because that's what we do.
Yep.
And we're going to ask them their name and they're not going to know. You know, that's the first thing any party does with an NPC is what's your name. And the DM for once does not have to come up with them, because they do not know.
Yeah.
Unless it's sewn into their underwear or something. They got no clue. It's like that episode of Buffy when Spike's wearing that coat and he opens it up and he's like, Randy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay.
I guess that's my name.
Or they like see the name of like the little hut that did make the jacket they're wearing, and they think that that's their name.
Yeah.
So they just start calling themselves that. Yeah, I like kind of what you were saying, Miaca. I think it would be interesting. There is going to be a player who wants to convince one to come with you and bring you along. And it's going to be incredibly frustrating to have this creature because they're not really going to be super helpful. But like, if they do know the way that you need to go, you're going to put up with it. And I think you could add that sense of like mopey and sad all the way along, which will wear on the players, and then also have that as like whichever player is interacting with it the most, they start to feel more negative and they start to feel more like hopeless. Like, it's like, guys, we're never gonna find so and so. Let's just quit. Why are we going this way? Like, we don't need to do this anymore. Like, and so it gives the players also an opportunity. It's like, but based on the choices you made by bringing these creatures or this creature with you, it's wearing on you. Like, you can't keep this going. Also, an out for the DM to be like, get rid of the, like, you can't be picking up pets, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Cannot bring every NPC you meet with us.
Exactly. Which I know wouldn't be Miaca's problem. Miaca would be like, can we get rid of them? Do we really care about them?
Can we just push this guy off a cliff, please? He's being a real bummer.
Yeah, he is a buzzkill.
Yeah.
But yeah, like leaning into, you have to then consciously realize you can't keep this creature around long term because it will destroy you. It just leeches that like lonely, sad aura that just is, you can't be around it.
Yeah. All right, exploration and clues. What would we sort of find before we found them, do we think?
Similar to maybe like what I said about Bothros, the bottomless pit. Maybe again you're going to find those like trinkets and like those specific pieces. You may even find a bunch of like random stuff, like such as like the utensils from the kitchen or plates or other like home items that are just scattered around and just chaotic in the space where they are, if that's like their home base. But yeah, I think that's what you would see. Or they could just pop up. I feel like they travel in groups. That's what I'm getting. Like I feel like you're not really going to see one by itself. So like if you're going to come across one, you're going to come across at least like 4 to like 6 of them. I don't know. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, and that would also help you as a DM, since they are such a low CR, to beef that up a little bit if you do have a little bit more experienced players or higher levels, is adding more to them. Yeah, I just see like I don't know that they're gonna have a ton of clues necessarily because they don't do much.
And they don't settle in somewhere to like get set up properly.
Yeah, but like I think you would just be walking through this very depressing dark forest, like maybe getting closer to the cities, but not quite there. So things are just starting. The mist is just starting to fall, and you would just see these just standing there randomly in the woods. Like they're not interacting. They're not coming after you like a bandit would, or they're not hiding in the trees like they're about to attack or ambush you. They're just there. Just no purpose. Just not doing anything. Just a dark figure in this mist.
Which I mean, I am the thriller side of like scary movies gets me so bad. So that freaks me out more than some lumbering zombie that's like traipsing through the forest at you.
Yeah. And they can talk too, so it's not like a zombie that would just be like making noises. Like they could still talk and see you and like have a voice. So that makes it like, okay, it's not a zombie. What is this thing just standing there?
You?
Like, yeah, you could even hear them talking to each other maybe, but just in such a monotone and not really making sense of anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and they really are portable to kind of pop in anywhere. I like the idea that you might encounter them where in the same places that you are seeking for a long rest or a short rest. Like when you're trying to find somewhere safe, you might go into a cave or the basement of an abandoned house to like find some secure place to lock down for the night. And I imagine, lack of light, you're moving through an area and then you do a light sweep and you just see a whole horde of creatures standing just all together in one side. And they're just like, you pan and you see all of like their legs and you see there's 8 of them. And it's like, holy shit, there's something in here. But then they don't do anything.
Yeah, they just stand there.
And so someone might say something and then they're just like, please just go. And it's like, wait, like, what are you, you know? And but they're just there. And it's like, this is our hole, or this is our basement. Just like, leave us be.
We just want to be. And it would be like, inevitably, you're going to have a player that just shouts out to them and is like, hey! And they're just going to all do that slow turn.
Yeah.
That just stare at you.
Yeah, or maybe one of them goes like, shh, like, don't talk to them. Just be quiet. And then your most perceptive player picks that up and is like, wait, they're talking.
Yeah.
Or picks it up in some bizarre language that it's like, how, or does anyone speak, Sylvan? And it's like, yeah, it's like, why are they talking in Sylvan?
Right. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
All right, for combat, how would we go about combat with these?
I feel like depending on the group, like you're either going to get some real mean ones, or you're either going to get some bit like what you all just described. I feel like depending on the party, they're going to be really easy to just kill.
Yeah, 11 hit points.
Yeah. So I don't really see it as like crazy combat. I feel like it's just gonna be very clunky from their side. Like they're gonna like try to hurt you with a fork. I know they come with their own weapons, but I feel like they're gonna go for the fork first. Because I know this thing has a purpose. Like I sort of remember it. Maybe it's dangerous. I'm gonna try fighting with that first before I go for my like big weapon. So just again, I have no respect for these.
We already know where the scale is going.
Yeah. We know. I mean, they are very squishy with their, I think, what'd you say? They have a 13 AC or something like that and 11 hit points. And I do like that they have a sling, so they can do a little bit of ranged stuff. If they are feeling threatened, they could very easily use the sling, and you're gonna find them wandering in the woods or caves or something, so they will have easy access to rocks and that kind of stuff to pick up and use in the sling. So as a DM, I would very much remember that they have that sling and you can do ranged combat with them. You don't have to get very close if your party starts being aggressive towards them, but your party is most likely gonna get through them pretty quickly.
Yeah, I like that. You could have like they really don't want to do combat as the first choice for these specific types. I feel like they would even be like, if you show aggression towards them, they would like step back and be like, please don't, like, just don't, because it's like, I don't want to do this. And I like the idea of maybe you see one and you're going up to it, trying to interact with it, and then you're deciding, like, I'm just gonna get rid of this thing. It seems like, let's just put it out of its misery. And then you get hit in the side of the head by a rock and realize there's like a whole group of them, 20 feet away. And it was just like, no, because they saw you were gonna like cut down one of theirs, and it's like,
yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to our next fun return, guys, which is the Sentries.
Yes, that's me again. So we're still in the Mystic Odysseys of Theros, the returned Sentry. So, okay, these ones are leaning a little bit further into being manipulated or put into servitude. Most of the time, it's the other higher level returned. We know that there's many different varieties of them of varying intelligence and different purposes. So it's usually those that are controlling and getting these ones to do different tasks or responsibilities. So if forced, they can perform simple, artless tasks at an average efficiency. So go gather up all the bodies or guard this door. And it's like, okay. And they are not alive. So they will do that forever. That will just be them, which also is very sad. Yeah, they never tire. So I think probably guarding or keeping watch is one of the tasks that make a lot more sense for the sentries in particular. Many times you may not realize that this is a sentry or something of a different level than perhaps a drifter, because they might just look like mundane messengers or mundane laborers. They might be moving something, just endlessly moving one thing from one place to another. And they won't have, amazing shining guard armor. They'll just have the armor that they had in life and they died in it and now they're back. So it will just be this weird mismatched situation. And I also don't think you'll see these just singular. You'll see them in groups and they'll just be, standing along a wall and yet really don't know why. And they don't really know why, just someone told them to. Okay, so getting into some of the stats. They are medium undead and lawful evil. They have an AC of 15 because they have leather armor and a shield. Hit point average is 22. We're doubling. Speed of 30 feet, and they are a CR of 1. So still pretty simple for even lower level to manage, but quite a bit step up from the drifter. Ability scores are again average or above average, intelligence and charisma at +0, con and wisdom at +1, and strength and dex at +2. They have the same necrotic damage resistances as the drifter and the poison damage immunity and poisoned conditional immunity. The passive perception is still 11, and it knows the languages it knew in life. For abilities, this is where it differs a little bit because these ones have pack tactics. So like we've talked about, we tend to expect the return to be in groups, and that it's maybe some innate self-preservation that way as well. But these ones will definitely be in pairs minimally or more. They have advantage on attack rolls against creatures if at least one of the returned allies is within 5 feet of a creature and they are incapacitated. So if you have a random encounter or you bust in and realize you're over your head with a bigger group of these, your party might be surprised by these pack tactics that's added on. So in addition, they also have that turn resistance, which means they have advantage on saving throws against effects that turn undead. And they have the unreadable face, which is that they are immune to any effect that would sense emotions or read its thoughts. So insight checks have disadvantage. When we get into their actions, they carry a spear. So they have a melee or ranged attack with the spear at +5 to hit, reaches 5 feet, range of 20 or long range of 60 feet, 1 target. On a hit, they do 1d6 +3 piercing damage, or can also do 1d8 +3 piercing damage if they use the spear two-handed. Regardless, they also give 2d6 poison damage. With the sling that they also carry, they have +4 to hit, range is 30 feet or long range of 120, and 1 target. It gives on a hit 1d4 +2 bludgeoning damage. So certainly elevated up and much more challenging and much more threatening. These ones are generally going to attack you and not avoid that if you impede them from doing their task, or you trigger, like maybe they're told to attack anything that comes in this way. Stand here. If something comes within 20 feet of this, like kill them. And so there will be, I think, much more combat in terms of these ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the returned Sentry.
All right. Before I ask questions, I do want to note, I don't believe this was mentioned. They all do have returned nature. While they are undead, they do need water and air, but not food or sleep. So that is different than most of the undead that we have come across. So while they will stand there, they do need at least water to survive, I guess. But they don't need to eat. So that's interesting. Also, they lose their faces in their return from the underworld. And that is why they wear these gold masks. But where are they drinking the water if they don't have a face?
Good question.
As oversight.
Yeah. just a thought. All right, now let's roll some dice. Oh, I got a 7. This dice isn't doing me any better. Though that's the highest I've rolled, so maybe it is.
I got a 12.
I rolled a 19. Finally. Thank goodness for switching dice.
All right. So, quests for the centuries. What do you got?
All right. Well, I can clearly see these as an amazing encounter as guards of some castle, keep, mansion, even necromancer wizard tower or cursed swamp lair. I think they are the ones that are just going to be standing there. They're not going to be trying to hide. They are tasked with things, and that is their purpose. They've been told. And so I think you're going to see them coming up to them. They may not react to you until something is triggered or until you attack them, but you are not going to be surprised by these. You know, there's not going to be an ambush. It's just going to be, it looks like that castle has guards. Let's go figure out what the hell's going on with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I since these like have a job to do, I feel like they're gonna be so focused on that job.
Mm-hmm.
I think a funny quest idea is like when you first encounter them, you're going to encounter the sentries, and they're going to be like, "Yeah, come with us," you know, get you to go with them, and they're gonna take you right to the Colosseum to be judged by these elder returned. And it's like the elder returned is all like, "Oh, you can kill them, take them to the bottomless pit." And it's like, what? So that would be hilarious. I like that idea.
Especially if you come across the drifters first and you've made friends with one, and then they bring you to that city and you're like, "Oh, you're just like this guy."
Right.
Like, not just like this guy.
It's like, no, you're just trying to do your job 24/7.
Yeah.
Like I'm the messenger, I'm the person that, like, you know, does this thing. I'm gonna do this always. So
yeah, there's not going to be a quest, I think, that is directly for the centuries, but they are going to be encountered on quests. Because they are guards of things and they have a job to do. So it's not going to be a quest to find the centuries. It's going to be a quest to find the treasure to those tombs. But there is a sentry in front of it, or a group of sentries, since they have pack tactics. So yeah, there's so many parts of the cities and the infrastructure of their communities that you're gonna come across them multiple times as you walk through these cities, because there's gonna be so many higher ups that are employing them and using them. So every step you take in this city, you could potentially come across one of these doing their job and you're interfering with it. So I think you're going to run into them a lot as you move through.
Yeah. Oh, that just gave me some ideas where, like, if you wanted them to play a slightly bigger role, is you're navigating this city and you have a particular symbol you're looking for. It's like, oh, this mask or something. You're looking for one in this mask, or there's a trigger word. And so you're sifting through all of these sentries, doing different tasks along the way. And it's like some of them are guards, some of them are carrying things, like moving things, carrying information, like in terms of like a bunch of scrolls that they're moving.
Right.
And you need to find the right one in the city that once you say that word, or once you find them and say that word, because you're looking for a particular mask that they're wearing, they will bring you exactly where you need to go. If you don't say that word, you're in combat with them. And if you kill them, you've totally fucked up your quest.
Good luck. That's when you find a note in their pocket.
Yep.
That the DM hurries and writes. Fuck. For existential horror, how would we use these versus the drifters? What would you change?
As you mentioned, Peps, about the mask. So this, I think for sure, is where like they are going to again be filled with dread, be doing a certain purpose, but that mask might be the attractor to something of substance when dealing with these things. And if you do destroy them and you loot them and take the mask, that's where you can then, instead of with the drifter, if you have it tag along, it's, wearing on the party, and maybe you'll figure it out, maybe you won't. With this one, it will be cursed. So if you loot that and you take it and you have it in your bag for, the duration of the quest and onwards after that, you are going to start getting like features of being cursed. You're going to start, your alignment might start changing and you don't even know why. You start wanting to do evil things and you don't understand why. And so I think that's where that emotional damage and that horror from just being around this horrific thing that came off of an awful creature, that's where I would go with it, is that.
Maybe your party, because these sentries are like a little bit more, like they have a little bit more purpose because they have a job to do. Maybe for some weird reason you trust them enough and then they just take you to that bottomless pit. That bottomless pit scares me because like you just don't know what, like, you just cease to exist. So maybe your party will think that they're like the drifters. I think we said this before. They'll think that they're like the drifters and like, okay, we can like work with these guys a little bit more, but they're going to like, try to protect whoever that they're stationed to protect and try to get rid of you in the most like crazy way possible. I think that's a bit scary because your players, like, they won't see it coming at all, especially if they're so used to like interacting with the drifters, and then you throw this in just for like a little bit of spice. And like it's like, oh, we gotta like take care of these guys, we gotta fight these guys now. So yeah, just like adding that surprise factor.
Yeah. And like Casey said with the masks, like I would lean into sort of the mask situation, and the drifters you might not kill and loot the mask. These you're more likely to get into combat with, and you're gonna take that shiny gold mask off their face. And like I said, underneath that mask is nothingness. And just the first time your player pulls a mask off of one of their dead bodies and realizes there's no face underneath. They were talking to you. How? They have no face. Like it's just emptiness there, and just the confusion of that. I would go into like great description of pulling that mask off and seeing nothing underneath.
Yeah, psychic damage right there.
Roll your sanity check. All right, and role playing for the sentries. What do we got?
So if I'm keeping with the angle of them being guards, I really like the idea of perhaps playing them a bit more robotic, in the sense of maybe there's 10 or 15 of them lining the walls of a keep or something like that. And the closer you get, they're not responding. And so it's like, oh, maybe they're just like fake, or maybe they don't do anything. Maybe they're harmless. And the second you do that trigger, so whether it's when you get within this amount of space of the door, or you get to this point in the path, you see the whole line of them turn in unison and just start moving towards you to attack. Like, there is no questioning, they are coming to attack you. But they are nothing. And then as soon as that trigger, which what they've been told to do, it's like, when this happens, attack, they just all move in unison. And I think that would be a very intimidating way to role play them and see what the players do from there.
I was thinking about the anagraphers. One second, let me make sure that's actually what I'm talking about. Yeah. So
there's so many words that we have to learn.
Right. So like the scribes, I'm thinking that they would like employ a few of these to like, because I feel like they are very busy, these scribes, for the return. And so I think that would be a cool like little side quest thing where you would run into one of these sentries and like try to communicate with it to locate the specific scribe, and they like lead you through the city. And so they're not too aggressive, but like, you know, as like that messenger and that kind of guide. And then of course you would have the ones that are just like, they're not going to try to communicate whatsoever, they're going to try to protect who they are like there to protect. There's a lot of like different levels of like role-playing options, I feel, for these creatures.
Yeah, they would be amazing bodyguards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a really good point, that the role-playing sort of depends on what their task is and how they would go about doing that. So I think you could come in contact with several of them in different scenarios and role play them all different based on the task that they have at hand. So it depends on who told them what to do. And if it's kill on sight, there's no role playing, they're killing you. Like, if anybody comes close to this, kill them. There's no talking to them. That's their task. I think they are a little bit less depressed than the drifters, just slightly, because they have a purpose of some kind. So if you do talk to them, they will be just slightly less dreadful.
Yeah, it's really
to communicate with, because they have a thing that they're doing.
Yeah, it's like, I have no idea who I am, where I came from, what I used to love, but this is what I do now.
Yeah, I'm just pushing this cart, and as long as you don't get in the way of me pushing this cart, then we'll be fine.
Right.
If you stop me from pushing this cart, we're not going to be fine.
Yeah. Oh, and can you imagine, in true party fashion, like you were talking about, Miaca, you meet up with one that is taking you somewhere, and then the party gets sidetracked and tries to like, oh, let's just go check this out on our way. Oh man, that sentry is gonna be like, no, you're fucking not.
Yeah.
Like,
you are coming here now.
Yeah.
I am supposed to bring you here. You are going here.
Yes. Like, there would be no negotiating to divert them from their task. It's I am bringing you here.
You can shop at that cart later.
Right. And then your party has to decide, because I feel like that's when they're going to get aggressive. Like, if you're like, no, we're going to go this way, like they draw out there. Like, calm down. So then your party has to make that choice. Like,
it's not that serious.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Exploration and clues. Do we think there would be anything different than the drifters coming across these?
Like I mentioned already, I think the only difference will be these ones aren't probably typically going to be trying to hide out. They're going to be doing the task that they've been given. So you're going to see them moving around and not feeling a sense of concern from other people around them. Like, because they're not going to automatically be leery of you because you're walking by. If you try and attack them, they're absolutely going to defend themselves, but they're just going to be doing their thing. They're not going to try and avoid anyone or anything. So that'll be the big indicator that this is not a drifter, and maybe a little bit more, there's a little more substance to it.
Mhm.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you, Casey. Like, these are going to be the ones that are going to be in groups, and they're not going to be hiding or anything. Like, you're going to see them and automatically think, okay, these are the guards that we got to try to like get through. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be funny, since they do need to drink water, that you come across one on a water break.
I would love that.
There's just like a fountain in the middle of the city or something. Like, they've all of them have to drink. It's not just these ones. It's every return has to drink at some point. So there's got to be a system somewhere in these cities for them to get water, right?
Yeah.
So you just like come across them. This is my 10-minute break, you know?
Yeah. Oh my
This is
gosh.
my 10-minute break to get water.
Yeah. Like, what would you overhear as chit chat around the water cooler when
Yeah,
it's like a
yeah.
fountain?
It's
How
all
is,
of the centuries, like, my boss is a dick.
Right.
And like, if they're responsible just for like moving books or moving scrolls or something, it's like, oh, more scrolls today. It's like, yep,
Yeah.
more scrolls.
That's what it is every day.
This is eternity, scroll after scroll.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
I love
Hilarious.
it. I'm very much picturing a water cooler now, and just all
Yeah.
of us standing around it.
And also the water will have to be like murky. Like, it
Yeah,
is not,
it's not gonna be good water. They're gonna offer you some, and you're gonna be like,
Yeah, it's like, oh, no.
I'm good. I got a fresh canteen right here. We're all right. Your druid's like, I'll just create water. Thank you. All right. Combat. Like we said, these are more combative than the drifters. So what would we lean on there?
Yeah, absolutely the pack tactics. And they are going to be more tactical, like less listless, kind of chaotic, like, no, please don't. And they like swing their scimitar. These ones have a spear. So they will use it as a ranged weapon, or they will, grasp it two-handed and like charge at you or walk straight at you for like a stabby stab. Like, they're going to be significantly more threatening. And so I think they're going to tactically use all of their abilities to destroy your part if that's their job.
Yeah, like same thing. They're gonna be so aggressive and like so combative towards you. It's gonna be a full-on fight, and they're going to but one thing I'm thinking, like, if this is happening like in the middle of the city, I feel like it would only be those three that are under the employ of the specific returns you're trying to get to. I feel like if there were other sentries around, they wouldn't join in because that's not their focus.
Yeah.
So
they're
like,
that ain't my problem over there.
Right. And so like, unless like you want to make it our problem, then go right ahead. But yeah, that's how I would see it. It's very focused.
The only way others would join in is if they all worked for the same person, if they were all under the same employer, and they all had their own separate tasks, but it was ultimately, but everybody's task is to protect this. You're going to move those things. You're going to do this thing. You're going to do that thing. But if anybody messes with anything, I need you all to come in. I think that's the only way. And then that would sort of give you a clue that they're all working together, that this is a group, because there'll be others outside of that group that don't join in. So that would sort of give you a hint of who's controlling that specific cluster of them.
Yeah. And if you have no insight on what possibly could, like, you might think it's mind control, you might think it's something else, like what being is managing this whole group. It's really eerie.
Mhm.
And I do like the idea, like you talked about, Miaca, where like you if you paint the picture of just the listlessness and task drivenness though of these creatures, and yeah, like if you enter combat, yes, you've got that going on, and if you're using a map, sure, but then in addition to that, you have the same ones that are just walking by you. Like they might even come within 5 feet of you, but that's their path that they've been doing, you know, as their responsibility. And so there's like this world that's just not reacting to a combat in the middle of the street or down an alley or outside of the keep. But then there's still a messenger that just walks by and goes in the door. And it's just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I have got the next returned, which is the Palamnite. Don't know if that's how you say it, but that's how I'm gonna say it. So
let's roll with it.
Made up words. Palamnites are among the most ruthless of the returned. These beings were once the most violent and brutal of the living. Even after losing their identities, the rage that lives inside of them still burns. These returned are very dangerous to the living, as all they know is death and violence, and walk the world seeking to spread that where they go. While some wander alone, causing aimless grief and destruction in their wake, many find their way to Adios, and they serve Tiamat, the Murder King. Now, Miaca gave us a bit of history on Tiamat, or Tamaret. I'll just give a little reminder. He is searching for Phoenix. He was the only one that witnessed Phoenix's escape. That is why he is after him. He shared his information with the god of the dead and was given this cursed blessing of becoming a returned. So he was sent back purely because he was the only one that witnessed the escape. But he did not know what Phoenix looked like. So like Miaca said, he just started killing everybody, which is why he's the Murder King. And that is where the Palamnites come in. He employs them to increase his numbers and increase his chances of killing Phoenix, because, I don't know, there's proof of numbers. But it didn't work anyway. So Phoenix is still out there just sort of laughing at him, but these Palamnites are still out there murdering as they go, for good measure, I guess. If we look into the part of the underworld they would have come from, it would most likely be Theros, which is the deepest ward of the underworld. It's reserved for the souls who have committed the worst crimes in life, and where Arovis's palace is. Deep under the palace lies a portal called Lathos, and this leads to the land of the living, and it's most likely, I think, where the Palamnites would have escaped. It's their closest path to the world of the living. Looking into their stats, they are medium undead, they are chaotic evil, and their CR is 4, so they are a bit more beefed up from the previous ones. They have an AC of 15 and an average hit point of 65, which is quite a bit more than the other two.
Yeah.
And their walking speed is 60, or not 60, 30. 30, oh. 30. I was still looking at 65. I can't look at things and read. Dex is their highest stat with a +3, followed by charisma and constitution, which both get a +2. Intelligence and wisdom gets a +1, and strength is average with a +0. For skills, they have +5 in acrobatics and stealth, and a +2 to athletics. So these ones are gonna hide a little bit more than the other ones that we've said will just sort of be there, because they do have that big bump to stealth. They have a damage resistance to necrotic and are immune to both the damage and condition of poison, like the other ones. They know any language that they knew in life. And for special abilities and traits, they get 3. I think the only one that the other ones don't have is their fleeting anger. I think that's the unique one to them. If another creature does damage to the returned, then the returned gets advantage on attack rolls until the end of its next turn. So that gives it a very like barbarian feel, I think.
Yeah.
To the anger and the rage really fueling their power there. They also have the turned resistance. They have advantage on saving throws against any effects that turn the undead. And they have the unreadable face, where they are immune to any effect that senses their emotions and read its thoughts. Insight checks to determine their intentions and sincerity are at disadvantage. And finally, their actions, they get a multi-attack. They get 2 short sword attacks. They get a +5 to hit on those and do 1d6 plus 3 piercing plus 3d6 poison.
Ooh.
Yes. So they do have a bit tougher of a punch there. But they do not have a ranged attack like the other two do. They don't have their sling or a spear that they can throw. So they do have to be right up on you.
Cool.
So that's what I have for the Palamnites. Casey, I believe you had a variant that sort of feeds off of these, correct?
Yes. So Miaca mentioned the returned Kakomantis. We'll say that. I liked it better than what I thought. These have the same stats and abilities as the returned Palamnite. They are the ones that have inherent magical obsession, though. So they have that spark from their former selves that was part of them. Like, they used to be magic users. They know it. They can sense that. And through their time in the Underworld, and now that they're back out of the Underworld, they are trying to use that. But instead of whatever energy they used before when they were living, they now harness the energy from the Underworld to do magic. So this comes in the form of a ranged spell attack. So this is where it beefs up the Palamnite a little bit because it gives you that ranged attack.
Okay.
So this attack is called the Underworld Bolt, and it is a +4 to hit. Range is 120 feet, 1 creature. On a hit, it does 2d8 necrotic damage, and the target can't regain hit points until the start of the returned next turn. If the target is missing any of its HP already, it takes 2d12 plus 2 necrotic damage instead. So that makes it much more threatening too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like that there's this angle that they hashed out a little bit for actually doing combat for the Kakomantis.
Yeah, I like it. They sort of give me, if you combine the two, they're like a wild magic barbarian vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they've got
like
some anger along with the sadness.
Yeah. All right. Let's roll some dice and get into some questions.
Nat 1. No.
2.
I rolled a 2.
Yes.
Roll off, Miaca.
All right.
Oh, 12.
5.
Okay.
Holy
all right.
moly.
That
is just class. That is why we're rolling so shit, is because of what the topic is today.
We just had to
Exactly,
roll
yes.
up on 2s to see who went first. Okay. So quests for these. I like the idea because they are just murdering people as they go along. You come across somebody who's on the run from them. Like, I could see these, they are not gonna take it well if you get away, because their whole purpose is finding that one person. So if they don't kill you, that's going to really piss them off because they failed that chance to kill that one person that they're after, Phoenix. And what if that was Phoenix, you know?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So like, they don't know that. So it could be, it could not be, they can't take that chance. So they're going to continue to hunt that person, and that person finds your group and is begging you for help against these Palamnites, and they work for one person. So there's going to be several of them. Like, if there's one person that got away, he's going to send a lot after that person, even if just one fought that person originally and they're like, yeah, it's this one guy. Well, 10 people show up.
Yeah.
You know, so then you have to deal with that. So I like that like somebody's on the run from them.
Yeah,
I'm gonna steal a bit from you, Peps, because I just had a thought. So what if, here we go, what if like your party, you're like interacting with like the drifters and some sentries, and then you have like one of these guys that are like just with the group, and they think one of your players, like one of the party members, is like Phoenix. So like imagine if they thought Dan was Phoenix and they run back to say, hey everyone, I found him. And then they like just like are like going after your party as like, and you have no clue like this is happening. You're just doing your thing like in the city and whatnot. But meanwhile, you have like this group of like, very angry return coming to kill you because they think you're this god that you're not. Like, I could definitely like put
him
Dan
being
in that
a god. You could have a warlock that follows him and gets his power from him, so they could sense that power of Phoenix coming from your warlock if they happen to choose him as a patron, and then they're fucked.
That's a good point. So it would be me that would.
Sorry, I turned your idea on you.
That's
anybody
so
in Theros, do not pick Phoenix as your as your patron.
There you go.
Like we touched on like how interesting Theros is overall, and these creatures haven't necessarily touched on specific kind of like Greek tendencies or like leaning into that. So I just was thinking, like, if you were to have some sort of gladiator type battles or combat going on, these would be the ones that would do it. So imagine you have to find some sort of coliseum. I'm gonna assume there is one somewhere in the world of Theros, and for perhaps pure entertainment, they've been tasked to fight. And so they are, it's a form of entertainment. They are going at it. And you come across this area that you're supposed to find, and you encounter these two returned Palamnites just fighting each other. And that's what they're doing. And once one is dead, it stands there until another one comes in. And perhaps whatever creature has directed it is finding the strongest one. It's like, there's 25 of you, I only need one of you, so fight until there's only one left. And it's a form of entertainment because they don't give a shit. And the Palamnites are all for it because all they want to do is their bidding and destroy. So they're just like, yes. And then you come strolling in, and they probably don't even realize that they're not supposed to, like, they probably imagine going in, and then you're kind of just observing it, but then their tactic is like, they've just been told to destroy anything that comes in, because for the last, 25 days, it's just been Palamnites. And then you guys come in, and suddenly they just turn, and they're just, they go after you instead. Oh, yeah. It's gonna be fun.
They're fun guys. All right, existential horror for these. You would just see them ripping things apart, ripping people apart. Like they just love the violence. So unlike the feeling of depression and hopelessness that the drifters would give you, and even the sentries, you would just feel rage coming off of them. Like you could just, the closer you get, the more you feel that anger in the air. And as they're walking towards you, they're killing everything in their path. Like their goal is to kill everything they come across. So if there is a crowd of people and they're coming towards you, they are ripping them apart without care as they walk towards you.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, no, like same. Like they are just covered in blood, and like just dried blood, and they're like a lot of body horror, I think, are around these return, because like they're like you said, just ripping apart bodies.
Their gold mask would just be splattered with blood.
Oh yeah. yeah, it's horrifying.
Yeah, and still that lack of like emotion in the sense of not caring who they were, what they were. It's just getting through this task specifically is all they need to do.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Like we've seen the evolution of alignment, I think that's going to also play into how you want the aura and like sense around each of the creatures, because these ones are, like you said, Peps, like they're chaotic evil, and yeah, that rage. So you are going to get such a different vibe and a different kind of emotional damage from these. It's going to be like threatening, scary, and like you want to get out of there.
Yeah.
You don't want them coming after you, but if you're in that situation, like it's that panic, I think that would be put in there.
All right, so going from there, we go into role playing, and how we would role play these differently. I think this is probably going to be our biggest separation in role playing from, I mean, the drifters and the sentries were both depressed and sad and aimless. The sentries had a little bit more going for them than the drifters, but these have a goal and a purpose and a thing that they are doing, which is just murder, but but they love it, and as part of the returned nature, they do say that all of the returned do feel emotions, but the emotions tend to be muted. With the Palamnites, their rage is not muted. That is all they know.
Right.
So that would shine through. They would just be, and they don't have faces to like see that emotion on them. So you as the DM would have to figure out how to describe that rage without like their eyebrows being a certain way or their teeth being clenched, or you have to come up with a more creative way to express that rage that's inside of them, which I think would be a fun thing to play with as the DM.
Yeah, I like it's for me, it's like role playing is going to be pretty difficult with these guys unless they think you're the you're the god, right? So like what you said, Peps, about the warlock whose patron is like having to deal with that and kind of like letting that be a background situation that's going on, like being tracked through this city. But like other than that, like these are very angry boys.
Yeah. The angry boys.
And they don't want to try to communicate or anything. They have that one mission and they're going to try to figure it out. So
yeah, I relate it to like a barbaric or a gladiator that's just fighting to survive. They don't recognize it that way, but like just kill anything that it comes across. Or like the old style, like Bane, when he's like injected with the toxins, and it's just like pure rage. Or like Hulk, like it's like you once it turns on and is on target, like there's no stopping it. It's like stomping its way directly at you. It's gripping its weapon so fiercely, and it's swinging far before it's even within 5 feet of you. And when it like rips things apart, it doesn't just like rip it and drop it. It rips it and like throws it to the side out of its way as it powers forward, not even thinking about what it just killed.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's going to have that like Jason Voorhees walk through the woods where like you're running and it's just walking and it's still going to catch you.
Yeah.
Like it's going to catch you and you don't know how it caught you.
Yeah.
But it did.
Exactly. And to take the angle of the Kakomantis, I think the role playing for that one could just be a smidge different in that maybe you see like some sort, it looks like it's somewhat infected. Like I'm thinking like that underworld energy is kind of under its skin, or like you see it across its like arms or something.
Yeah.
And like its one hand is just like black because that's where it uses its ranged weapon attack, that Underworld bolt comes from its one hand. And that, I think, could be a fun thing too. Maybe peppered in with a sea of the Palamnites. Then there's a few that stop and then do some shit and like throw these wild bolts at you. And they just have that like extra little thing.
That extra thing. Yeah. And looking at the image, we just get one image of all of the returned in the book. So it doesn't really differentiate what they would look like separately. But this guy, he's got like grayish skin. So I like what you said about it being infected and putting, like, oftentimes purple is sort of a evil underworld color that we see in movies and things, or even just it being black through their veins and it just being different like that. Yeah. I really like that idea of like the veins and that magic coursing through them. To just give you a small hint that these ones are a little bit like, what is wrong with that one?
Yeah.
All right. Exploration and clues for these. I think that these would give you more than the other two for exploration and clues. Like I said, they are they have that +5 to stealth and they're hunting you. So they are going to have a little bit more tact with that. They are going to find the best way to hunt you. And if that's waiting for you to sleep or that kind of thing. Also, clues, you're going to find a lot of dead bodies. Like they're killing everything in their path. So you're going to see that trail and wonder what the fuck did this. Like as you get closer to a town and you see, like, you come up on a farmhouse and they're dead, and then you get closer into the town and just absolutely everything is dead.
To make it even worse, they have killed the dog. Like the dog is dead on the
chickens,
porch.
The cows, fucking everything. Like there's nothing left in its path because it doesn't. While it has the mission to kill Phoenix, it just wants to kill anything. So I don't. To your point, I don't think it would care if it's human or humanoid or not, or mundane animal. They're going to just destroy it.
I would see these like again, like maybe on the outskirts of that city, and then they would set up camps almost, and so you would like come across their camp and it's just like horror, blood everywhere. Like you said, where once stood like maybe a farm or something, it's just like not anymore. It's just a camp for these things, and it's just clearly you can see it was like a bloodbath here, like the dead animals and stuff, and they're just like living in it. Like
don't care. Oh, and if we're going down this dark, like, you know, massacred village, you come up to it in the aftermath, like they have already moved on, and you find one small child that was like thrown into a cubby hole, a chest somewhere that they ended up not finding, and you are trying to get some information on what the hell like did this from the traumatized kid. And all they can describe is like the weapons and the slashing and the black magic, and they're like peeking through, you know, the slit in the cubby that they saw, you know, just the massacre of their whole family. And it's these creatures that are wearing these masks. It's like they didn't have a face. And so like that could be a really interesting way to clue in what are these things doing. And if you had come across the other ones up until then you realize, oh shit, this does not sound like the ones we were we encountered before.
Nice. All right, so with combat, how would we, I mean, you're definitely gonna get into combat if you come across them.
A fight will be involved.
There's no getting around that. As the DM, getting into combat with them, since they do not all, but most work for the Murder King, you can come across just one here and there on their own, maybe before they got there, you know, I don't know, but you'll come across armies of them. And I do really like the idea of mixing the Palamnite with the Kakomantis? How are we saying that?
Yeah.
Kakomantis.
Kakomantis? It's
I
Kakomantis. I don't know. That was the most Midwest I've been in this episode. Kakomantis.
love it.
They sound super scary. That's definitely going to be a sound clip.
Uh-huh. It is.
You're welcome, Dan. Yeah, I would definitely combine the two of them. I think the Kakomantis would be more rare to come across, so you'll only have maybe 2 of those in the group of 10 to 15 that you come across. But I do think that they would be mixed if they are sent out on a mission to destroy. They're like, you team, go west, kill everything that way. You team, go east, kill everything that way. Sort of thing. So you're going to come across more than one. Lean into the fleeting anger. If any damage is dealt to them, they get advantage on attack rolls. That's huge because you got to attack them. You got to do damage to defeat them. So you're giving them what they need to hit you harder.
Yeah.
Just by trying to survive, you're making it worse for yourself. So that is probably the best trait that they have in it. And they have multi-attack, so they can hit twice.
Yeah.
Honestly, Peps, I think you hit on everything.
Yeah.
Like,
I was very inspired by these. I was like, these guys are fun. Like these.
there's like it's a lot of opportunity for combat here and how you would like set it up, like whether it's like beyond the city or like right there in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these things are so chaotic.
Yeah. I like the idea of them being like going back to kind of like Greek lore, like they're a champion. Like one of them, has existed for 50 or 100 years already and has now been renowned as this champion. And perhaps you end up having to go in one-on-one combat. You're a barbarian against the champion Palamnite, something like that, where you just add a little bit more flavor. Maybe that makes them a little bit more transportable to different places. And I imagine like for Game of Thrones lovers, like the Mountain, who, should have died from poison, but didn't. Right. And is just decrepit and completely terrifying. And like can nearly have their eyes like gouged out, but then does that to other people with like no worries, does not have a care in the world. Just I feel like would have horrific battle scars and do any type of wild shit to win a battle. So they might use their swords in weird ways. You could hack off one arm and then they're just like, they lift up their arms still holding the sword and just whack you with it. Like it's just like so chaotic and so horrific. You could just do so much like that in their combat.
Yeah. I think what you had said about the like battle scars and that also I think lends into the existential horror of these.
Yeah.
As undead, like they're gonna get hit and it's not gonna affect them, so they are going to be tore up.
Yeah.
And also with the fleeting anger says if another creature deals damage, if they are working together and smart enough to know that, they could hit each other to get that advantage. They have a multi-attack, so they could hit one of them and give each other advantage if they happen to go first and don't have it yet.
Yeah. Imagine that visual. You suddenly see them all turn on each other and just slash and then turn back to you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so they are really crazy.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. You could get really really brutal, like really lean into the brutality. All right, that's what we have. So I think that's all our guys.
Yes.
All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10 missing faces, How would you rank the return from Theros as part of the undead landscape in D&D 5th edition? So just as a reminder, we have the return Drifter and Kakomantis, return Sentry, and the return Palamnite.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do we want to roll for it, or do we want to?
Sure. Why don't we see what the final poor roll will be?
The final roll. All right.
Roll off the table.
let's group the Kakomantis in with the Palamnite. When we get there. I got an 18.
I got a 19.
Oh my gosh. 3.
All right.
All right, so I'm going first. So
yeah, the Drifter.
The Drifter, there. Scale of 1 to 10. It's gonna be it's gonna be a 4 for me. Only because
that's generous. I thought you were gonna go way lower than that.
Only because they have that scare factor, like Casey talking about it being like in like a cave or something, and like you're just shining your light and you just see like these legs and these people just standing there quietly. It's like, oh no, I'm not doing this. But like other than that, like I don't respect them at all. They're just there drifting around. It's like, all right, stop following me, calm down.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna go with like a 3. Like they're so squishy, you know. They're gonna be more annoying, I think, to deal with than anything.
Yeah.
You're gonna get absolutely nothing out of them.
Yeah, and they generally won't be threatening initially, unless things go really awry. But yeah, I'm going down to 2. I'm like doing it even lower. I'm just like, nah.
Yeah. All
right. So
Sentry next.
Yeah, let's just Sentry. Yeah. So for the Sentry, I would give it a 6. I think that's fair to say, a 6. Only because they're a little bit more, you know, a little bit more beefier, and they're very focused on what they have to do. Like we would get into combat with them, but it wouldn't be as terrible as the other Palamnite. So yeah, I'd go like 5 or 6. I think it depends on the task that they're doing. Exactly.
If they're just moving a cart, then it's like a 4 or 5. If they're like guarding a thing and you're definitely going to get into combat with them, then you know it moves up maybe 5 or 6. But they're pretty average. I think.
Yeah, I'd say 5 too. And like you said, I think that's actually what makes them maybe 3 points higher for me than the Drifter is that like they might be doing a lot of different tasks, but they still have the same like attack abilities. And so like you might see that dude pulling the cart. If you get in their way and won't move, they drop the cart and then shit's happening. So it's like that surprise encounter that can go wrong very quickly before you realize you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so let's go with the return Palamnite. Scale of 1 to 10 for me, it's gonna be a 10 because that's a lot of chaos for me.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go 9, and I think the only reason I'm gonna give them a 9 and not a 10 is because I would give the Kakomantis a 10. Because they're just a touch scarier with their magic. But just their bloodthirsty nature and really gives them that much higher bump than you get with like the Drifter.
Yeah.
A 2 to 4, you know.
Yeah, like I would put these 8, 9 for the Palamnite, and then if we're talking about the Kakomantis, I think we did a great job at describing the horror and how to really play that out, because I can see these being a much higher CR based on how we have like given the potential and talked about the potential that they have today. Like, so for me, it's like, well, it seems weird to have for like a CR4 to be a 10, you know, but these absolutely have that. So
Yeah. Especially if you consider them all working in a group.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like one on its own, maybe not. But when you have an army of them just destroying everything in its wake, that really boosts up the scary.
Yeah.
And for me, like the Kakomantis, that's gonna be a ton as well. Like I lean more towards the magical side of my characters, and so me going up against something that's using magic too, and it's just very chaotic and pulling magic from the underworld and all that. It's like, oh gosh. So
Yeah.
All right, well, now it's time to close the crypt on this part of our conversation on Undead and D&D 5th edition. Stay tuned next month when we discuss what some gods do to some of their most devoted followers after they die.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, www.itsamimic.com, as well as a Patreon. If you'd like to discuss what you've heard here today, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and at r/itsamimic. For other episodes on other kinds of monsters, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
Like,
You got
it, yeah. God, that's my biggest fear, is that like we're gonna forget to hit record, or it's just not going to work right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly me. I was like, I don't want to be responsible for clicking that.
No.
And I thought I was making him responsible for it, but he walked
And
away.
he walked away. Then we're gonna have to be funny and charming all over again.
I know.
Remember all the things we said.
Yeah. The day will come where I have to re-record something, but so far,
You've been good. All right.
Did you go, Peps?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, thank goodness. All right.
I know towards the end it's hard to keep track of like who talked when. I don't fucking know.
You're being a bit spicy, so